The chandeliers of Le Pavon restaurant hung like frozen stars, their light casting gentle shadows across white tablecloths and crystal stemware. Michael Winters adjusted his tie a habit from board meetings that carried into his personal life and checked his watch. The platinum timepiece had been his wife's last gift, an anniversary present delivered 3 days before the accident. 5 years had passed, but he still caught himself running his thumb along its edge, a ritual of remembrance that had become as unconscious as breathing. Across the table, his 8-year-old daughter Lily pushed mashed potatoes into perfect mountain peaks before carefully flattening them again. Her dark hair was pulled back in a neat ponytail, revealing a face that carried echoes of her mother's features. Lily looked up, catching her father mid-stare. "You're doing the sad eyes again, Daddy." Michael blinked, forcing his lips into what he hoped resembled a smile. "Just thinking about work stuff, sweetheart. You promised no phone at dinner." Her small finger pointed accusingly at the device face up beside his water glass, its screen illuminating every few seconds with new notifications. "You're right." Michael flipped the phone over. "No distractions tonight, just us." A waiter approached with practiced deference, refilling Michael's barely touched wine glass. The restaurant buzzed with quiet conversation and the gentle clink of silverware against fine china. This monthly dinner had become their tradition, his attempt at normalcy in a life that had lost its center when Sarah's car had slid off an icy bridge one February night. Lily's fork paused halfway to her mouth, her attention suddenly fixed on something beyond the window. Michael followed her gaze to where rain had begun to fall, gentle, at first, then with gathering strength. Through the streaked glass, a figure stood beneath the restaurant's awning. A young woman, her blonde hair pulled back in a messy ponytail, clutching something to her chest. "Daddy, look at the lady. She's getting wet." Lily's voice carried the unfiltered concern of childhood. Michael glanced over again. The young woman had stepped back further under the awning, adjusting what he now realized was a small bundle wrapped in a faded blue blanket. "She has a baby," Lily whispered, eyes widening with the discovery. Before Michael could respond, Lily had slipped from her chair and was making her way toward the restaurant's entrance, her small patent leather shoes clicking against marble floors. "Lily, wait." Michael stood, dropping his napkin beside his untouched filet mignon. He nodded an apology to the waiter and followed his daughter's determined path, catching up just as she pushed open the heavy glass door. The evening air carried the chill of early autumn, damp with rain that fell more steadily now. Under the shelter of the awning, the young woman startled at their sudden appearance, instinctively drawing the bundle closer to her chest. Up close, Michael could see that she couldn't be older than 19 or 20. Her coat was threadbare at the elbows, her shoes splitting at the seams, but there was a quiet dignity in the way she held herself, chin lifted, slightly shoulders straight despite their evident fatigue. "Hi," Lily said, fearless in the way only children can be. "Why are you standing in the rain?" The young woman's eyes, a striking clear blue, darted from Lily to Michael, then back again. The bundle in her arms shifted, and a tiny fist emerged from the blanket folds, followed by a soft cooing sound. "Lily," Michael placed a gentle hand on his daughter's shoulder. "We should head back inside." "But Daddy, they're all wet and it's cold." Lily's logic was simple and irrefutable. The young woman spoke, then, her voice softer than Michael had expected. "It's okay. We're just waiting for the bus." The slight tremor in her words betrayed the lie. A gust of wind drove rain beneath the awning, and the young woman turned slightly, using her body to shield the infant. The movement revealed the true state of her coat, not just worn, but soaked through from earlier exposure. "The bus stop is 2 blocks down," Michael said, professional habit making his tone more matter-of-fact than he intended. "And the next one isn't for 40 minutes. Something flashed in the young woman's eyes. Not fear, but a wariness born of experience. "We're fine, really." The baby made another sound, this one less content, edging toward fussiness. The young woman bounced slightly, a practiced motion of comfort. "What's your baby's name?" Lily asked, stepping closer despite Michael's restraining hand. A moment of hesitation, then Noah. "His name is Noah. He looks hungry," Lily observed, peering at the now visible face of the infant, round-cheeked with a tuft of dark hair, his eyes a surprisingly vivid blue despite his young age. The young woman said nothing, but the slight tightening of her jaw told Michael everything. He'd built a tech empire by reading people's unspoken signals. Hunger was impossible to miss, especially when wrapped in pride. "Would you like to come in? We're just having dinner." The words left Michael's mouth before he'd fully processed them. The young woman shook her head quickly. I couldn't. Please, Lily's voice carried a child's transparent hope. Noah looks cold. Rain streaked down the young woman's face, indistinguishable from what might have been tears. For a moment, Michael saw something else in her expression, a bone-deep exhaustion that made his own fatigue from 18-hour workdays seem trivial by comparison. I'm Michael Winters. This is my daughter, Lily. He gestured towards the restaurant's warm interior, just to get out of the rain. The hesitation was palpable pride wrestling with necessity. Finally, the young woman nodded once. Hannah. My name is Hannah. Michael held the door, allowing Hannah and Noah to enter first. The maitre d' looked up, his practiced smile faltering at the sight of the bedraggled young woman with her infant. His eyes moved to Michael, questioning. They'll be joining us, Michael said, his tone making it clear this wasn't a request. The maitre d's gaze lingered on Hannah's worn clothing and the obviously second-hand baby blanket. Sir, I'm afraid we have a dress code, which I'm sure makes exceptions for guests of Horizon Technologies' CEO. Michael rarely wielded his position this way, but the thought of sending Hannah and her baby back into the rain stirred something protective he hadn't felt in years. Lily had already taken Hannah's free hand, leading her toward their table with the unconscious confidence of a child who had never known scarcity. Michael followed, noting the stares from neighboring tables, some curious, others disapproving. At their table, Hannah hesitated again. I don't want to intrude on your dinner. You're not intruding, Michael said, signaling for another chair. Please sit. Hannah lowered herself cautiously into the offered seat, adjusting Noah in her arms. The baby had quieted his wide eyes, taking in the unfamiliar surroundings, the crystal chandeliers, the flickering candles, the gleaming silverware. His small face was alert, intelligent. A waiter appeared, his expression professionally neutral despite the unusual situation. Would you like to see a menu, miss? Hannah glanced at Michael, a flash of panic crossing her features. Bring another plate of whatever my daughter and I are having, Michael said smoothly. And perhaps some mashed potatoes for the little one? The waiter nodded and retreated. Around them, the murmur of conversation had resumed, though Michael noticed several diners still watching with undisguised interest. Thank you, Hannah said quietly. But I don't have any way to pay you back. I'm not looking for repayment. Michael meant it. His wealth had long ago passed the point of practical utility. He had more money than he could spend in 10 lifetimes. Noah squirmed in Hannah's arms, his face scrunching in the universal precursor to a creepy. Hannah shifted him to her shoulder, patting his back with practiced ease. Shh, it's okay. It's okay. Lily watched fascinated. Can I touch him? I've never seen a baby so tiny. Hannah hesitated, then nodded. Just be gentle with his head. Lily reached out with careful fingers, touching Noah's small hand. The baby instantly wrapped his fingers around hers in a surprisingly strong grip. Lily giggled, delighted. He likes you, Hannah said, the first genuine smile appearing on her tired face. The waiter returned with a plate of food, setting it before Hannah. The scent of perfectly cooked steak and roasted vegetables wafted up, and Michael saw Hannah swallow hard, her composure wavering at the sight of the meal. Please eat, Michael said, keeping his voice casual to preserve her dignity. Hannah hesitated, looking down at Noah, clearly torn between her own hunger and caring for her child. I can hold him, Lily offered eagerly. Daddy says I'm very responsible. Before Michael could intervene, Hannah shook her head. Thank you, but he's a bit fussy when strangers hold him. She looked at Michael. Would you mind if I fed him first? He hasn't eaten since this morning. The simple statement hit Michael with unexpected force. This morning, hours ago, his own refrigerator at home was stocked weekly by his housekeeper, Lily's lunch packed daily with organic snacks and balanced nutrition. Of course, he said, gesturing to the mashed potatoes the waiter had brought in a separate small bowl. With practiced efficiency, Hannah balanced Noah in the crook of her arm and reached for the spoon with her free hand. She scooped a tiny portion of the mashed potatoes, blew on it gently, then guided it to Noah's mouth. The baby's reaction was immediate and heartbreaking in its simplicity. His entire face lit up with pleasure, tiny hands reaching toward the spoon for more. Hannah fed him patiently, one small spoonful at a time, murmuring soft encouragement. Good job, sweet boy, that's it. Michael found himself transfixed by the scene, the absolute focus with which Hannah attended to her son, the pure love evident in every gentle touch and soft word. There was something sacred in it, something that made the business deals and stock prices that consumed his days seem suddenly hollow. Lily watched with equal fascination. He really likes potatoes. Hannah nodded her attention, never leaving Noah. It's his favorite, and it's filling. The unspoken implication hung in the air when food was scarce. What filled the stomach took precedence over variety or nutrition. Michael thought of the organic baby food he'd insisted on for Lily, the pediatric nutritionist he'd consulted when she went through a phase of refusing vegetables. When Noah had eaten his fill, Hannah finally turned to her own plate, cutting the steak into small bites with the careful precision of someone making a luxury last. She ate without hurry, savoring each bite while keeping Noah secure in her arms. "Where do you live?" Lily asked, her child's curiosity untempered by adult propriety. Michael started to intervene, but Hannah answered before he could. "Well, we have a car. It's not much, but it keeps us dry." She said it matter-of-factly without self-pity. Lily's forehead creased in confusion. "You live in a car. Where do you take baths?" "Lily, Michael said gently. "That's enough questions for now." Hannah met his eyes across the table. "It's okay. She's just curious." She turned to Lily. "There's a gym that lets people shower for $5, and there's a laundromat where I wash our clothes." Michael felt something twist in his chest. The casual acceptance in Hannah's voice made it clear this wasn't a temporary situation, but a life adapted to persistent scarcity. "What about Noah's dad?" Lily asked, following her own train of thought. This time, Hannah's composure faltered slightly. "He's not around anymore." "Like my mom," Lily said with the brutal simplicity of childhood. "She died when I was 3, but I still have my dad." She reached for Michael's hand across the table. Hannah's expression softened. "I'm sorry about your mom." Michael squeezed Lily's small fingers, grateful for her unconditional love, while simultaneously aware of how inadequate he often felt as a single parent. "It's been 5 years," he said, the words feeling insufficient against the weight of what they'd lost. Noah had begun to drift off to sleep, his small body relaxing against Hannah's chest, one hand still clutching her collar. The restaurant around them continued its evening rhythm, waiters gliding between tables, the gentle clink of silverware against china, the murmur of conversation. Through the windows, rain continued to fall, and illuminated by the street lamps like strings of liquid gold. Hannah finished her meal with the same careful precision with which she'd started, ensuring not a morsel was wasted. When she was done, she looked up at Michael, her expression composed, but her eyes revealing a depth of gratitude that made words unnecessary. "Thank you," she said simply, "for the meal and for not asking us to leave." "Where are you parked?" Michael found himself asking, thoughts already racing ahead. "It's still raining pretty hard." Hannah gathered Noah closer, defensive instincts visibly rising. "We'll be fine. We've managed worse." Michael recognized the pride in her voice, not arrogance, but the hard-won dignity of someone who had learned to survive without handouts. It was a quality he respected in business associates. In this young woman, barely more than a girl, it was both admirable and heartbreaking. "At least let me drive you," he offered. "No strings attached." Hannah studied his face, searching for hidden motives. Whatever she saw there must have reassured her, because she gave a small nod. "That would help. Thank you." Outside, the valet had already brought Michael's car around, a sleek black Audi with butter-soft leather seats. Hannah hesitated before getting in, clearly conscious of her damp clothes against the luxury interior. Michael opened the back door instead, where Lily's booster seat occupied one side. "You can sit with Noah back here," he said. "More room to keep him comfortable." The drive was mostly silent, with Hannah providing quiet directions that led them away from the city's gleaming center and toward its more neglected edges. Lily had fallen asleep, her head resting against the window, exhausted from the excitement of the evening. They turned into an abandoned parking lot behind what had once been a grocery store, now boarded up and covered in graffiti. In the corner sat a navy blue sedan, at least 15 years old, its paint faded and one bumper secured with what looked like wire. "That's us," Hannah said softly, careful not to wake either sleeping child. Michael pulled up beside the old car, keeping his headlights on to illuminate the rain-slicked pavement. He turned in his seat to look at Hannah directly. "Is there somewhere else I can take you, a shelter or—" "Shelters don't take single women with children after 7 p.m., Hannah said with the weary knowledge of experience. "And they separate men from women so families can't stay together. The car is better. It's ours." The simple, possessive "ours" carried a weight of pride that gave Michael pause. This battered vehicle was more than transportation. It was home sanctuary, the one stable element in a life that had clearly known too much uncertainty. I understand, he said, though he knew he couldn't possibly comprehend the reality of her situation. Hannah carefully opened the door, sheltering Noah from the rain with her body as she stepped out. Thank you again for dinner. Noah hasn't eaten that well in weeks. The casual mention of her child's hunger hit Michael like a physical blow. In his world, scarcity was an abstract concept, something that happened to anonymous others in distant places. Seeing it embodied in this young woman and her baby resilient, dignified yet undeniably vulnerable made it impossible to dismiss. Wait, Michael said, reaching into his wallet. He extended a business card. If you need anything at all, call this number. It's my private line. Hannah looked at the card, hesitation evident in her posture. Finally, she accepted it, tucking it into her coat pocket. Good night, Mr. Winters. Tell Lily thank you from Noah and me. Michael watched as she unlocked her car and slipped inside with practiced efficiency, settling Noah in what appeared to be a makeshift bed in the back seat. Only when he saw her lock the doors from inside did he put his car in reverse, circling once to exit the lot. In the rearview mirror, the old sedan sat dark and silent, a lonely island in the empty parking lot. Michael drove home with a heaviness in his chest that had nothing to do with the rich meal or the late hour. The penthouse was silent when they arrived, the only sound the soft hum of the climate control system, maintaining a perfect 72 degrees. Michael carried the sleeping Lily to her bedroom, carefully removing her shoes before tucking her beneath the duvet. Her room was a child's paradise, shelves of books and toys, a canopy bed with fairy lights, a desk where her homework lay neatly completed by their housekeeper. In the doorway he paused, looking back at his daughter's peaceful face. What would her life have been like if Sarah had survived and he had been the one lost? Would they have maintained their lifestyle supported by his life insurance and investments? Or would circumstances have conspired to place them in a situation like Hannah's, alone, vulnerable, surviving day by day? The thought followed him to his own bedroom, where he loosened his tie and stared out at the city skyline. Somewhere out there in a parking lot behind an abandoned store, Hannah was settling in for the night with her baby, using her body heat to keep him warm, perhaps going hungry herself to ensure he was fed. Sleep eluded Michael that night. He lay awake, haunted by the image of Noah's delight at simple mashed potatoes, by the worn but clean clothes Hannah had dressed him in, by the fierce love evident in every protective gesture. Here was a mother doing everything humanly possible for her child, yet still falling short of providing the most basic necessities. Morning arrived with pale sunlight filtering through automated blinds. Michael found Lily already awake, sitting at the breakfast bar, where their housekeeper, Mrs. Chen, was preparing pancakes. Daddy, can we go see Hannah and Noah today? Lily asked without preamble, her mind clearly picking up exactly where it had left off the night before. Mrs. Chen raised an eyebrow, but continued cooking without comment. She had been with them since before Sarah's death and was accustomed to Lily's direct questions. Michael poured himself coffee from the carafe. Hannah and Noah need their privacy, sweetheart. But they live in a car, Lily persisted. Cars aren't houses. Some people have different living situations, Michael said, carefully aware of how inadequate the explanation was. Lily frowned, processing this. But it's not fair. Noah is so little and it's cold outside. The simple moral clarity of his daughter's worldview made Michael's throat tighten. When had he lost that? When had he accepted that some children slept in cars while others had private playrooms and personalized nutrition plans? You're right, he admitted. It's not fair. So we should help them, Lily concluded, her logic unassailable. You always say we should help people if we can, and we can, right? We have lots of money. Out of the mouths of babes, Michael nodded slowly. Yes, we can help. But we need to be thoughtful about how we do it. Can I draw Noah a picture, Mrs. Chen? Do we have crayons? As Lily became absorbed in her artwork, Michael retreated to his home office. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered panoramic views of the city, a visual reminder of his position at its summit. On his desk, a single photograph in a silver frame showed Sarah holding a newborn Lily, her smile radiant despite the exhaustion of childbirth. What would you do? He asked the photograph quietly. The answer came not in words, but in a memory, Sarah volunteering at a women's shelter during their first year of marriage, before Horizon Technologies had made them wealthy, when they were still living in a small apartment and counting pennies. She had always led with her heart. Decision made, Michael reached for his phone. A few calls would set things in motion discreetly, respectfully, without fanfare. Hannah's pride was as evident as her need. Any help would have to honor both. First, he arranged for a pediatrician, one who owed him a favor, to make a community outreach visit to the parking lot, bringing vaccines and supplies under the guise of a church program. Next, he contacted his personal assistant to prepare a package of essentials: formula diapers, non-perishable food, warm blankets to be delivered anonymously before dawn. It wasn't enough, not nearly enough, but it was a start. The next morning, Michael rose before sunrise. Leaving Lily in Mrs. Chen's care, he drove through the quiet streets to the abandoned lot. The Navy sedan was still there, windows fogged from within, evidence of life in the cold metal shell. He parked at a distance and waited until he was certain no one was watching before approaching with the supplies. He set the packages near the car, not too close to alarm, but near enough to be discovered easily. Then he retreated, feeling both satisfied and strangely hollow, aware that this gesture barely scratched the surface of what was needed. This became his morning ritual. Over the next week, different supplies each day, always delivered before dawn, always without fanfare or note. Baby clothes, a small battery-operated heater, prepaid gas cards left in an envelope. Each time he was careful to be gone before Hannah woke, respecting her privacy and dignity, even as he tried to ease her burden. On the seventh day, he arrived to find a note tucked under a small stone near where he usually left the packages. In neat, careful handwriting, it read simply, "Thank you, Noah is warmer now." No signature, no elaboration. None was needed. That evening, Michael sat in his usual spot at the head of the conference table, surrounded by the executive team of Horizon Technologies. Quarterly projections filled the screen behind him, numbers in the billions, growth charted in elegant upward slopes. The discussion revolved around market expansion, acquisition targets, the never-ending pursuit of more. "Michael, your thoughts on the Asian market strategy?" He blinked, realizing he'd been staring past his CFO at the rain-streaked windows. Outside, the city glittered with light and prosperity, while somewhere in its shadows a young mother was probably singing her baby to sleep in the backseat of a car. "I think," he said slowly, "that we need to reconsider our priorities." The room fell silent, executives exchanging glances. Michael Winters was known for his laser focus on growth and innovation. Philosophical musings were not part of his leadership style. The foundation, he continued, referring to the corporate charity that bore the company's name but received minimal attention from its leadership. "It's time we put real resources behind it. Not just tax write-offs, but meaningful investment in housing and security, particularly for families with children." His COO leaned forward. "That's admirable, Michael, but the shareholders have seen record returns for the past 7 quarters. Michael interrupted, his voice quiet but firm. "It's time we balance profit with purpose." The meeting continued, but something had shifted, not just in the room, but in Michael himself. For the first time since Sarah's death, he felt a clarity of purpose that transcended balance sheets and market share. That night, he dreamed of Sarah. Not the hospital room where he'd last seen her, broken and still, but from before, laughing in their first apartment, painting the nursery for Lily, her hand protective over her growing belly. In the dream, she smiled at him, then turned to look at something just beyond his field of vision. He tried to follow her gaze, but the dream dissolved, leaving only a lingering sense of connection. He woke to the sound of his phone vibrating on the nightstand. The clock read 2:17 a.m. Disoriented, he answered without checking the caller ID. "Mr. Winters." The voice was familiar but strained with panic. "It's Hannah from the restaurant. I'm sorry to call so late, but Noah, he's burning up, and I don't know what to do. The hospital. Won't they, said, without insurance." Michael was already out of bed, reaching for clothes. "Where are you now?" "Memorial Hospital emergency room. They won't admit him without—" "Stay there, I'm coming." He called Mrs. Chen on his way to the garage, apologizing for the hour and asking her to come stay with Lily. Then he drove through the sleeping city, rain once again falling as if the weather itself were synchronized with Hannah's crises. The emergency room was harshly lit and half full despite the hour. Hannah stood near the intake desk, Noah clutched to her chest. Even from a distance, Michael could see the infant's flushed face and labored breathing. Hannah's expression was one he recognized from the mirror in the days after Sarah's accident, the look of someone trying desperately to hold themselves together while their world collapsed. She saw him, and her composure cracked slightly. His fever is 104. He's not responding like he should. They said to wait, but Michael didn't wait for her to finish. He approached the intake desk where a tired-looking woman was typing on a computer. This child needs immediate attention. The woman barely glanced up. As I explained to the mother without insurance, I'm Michael Winters, CEO of Horizon Technologies. I'll personally cover any and all expenses. This child needs a doctor now. Perhaps it was his tone or the mention of his company, one of the hospital's major donors, but the atmosphere shifted instantly. Within minutes, a nurse had appeared to escort Hannah and Noah to an examination room, with Michael following close behind. The pediatrician on call arrived shortly after a young woman with kind eyes and efficient hands. She examined Noah thoroughly while Hannah hovered nearby answering questions about symptoms and onset with the careful precision of someone who had studied medicine herself. He has a severe ear infection, the doctor finally announced, and he's showing early signs of pneumonia. We need to start antibiotics immediately and monitor him overnight. Hannah's face paled. Overnight, I don't have any way to. All expenses are covered, Michael said quietly. Just focus on Noah. The relief that flooded Hannah's face was immediately replaced by wariness. Why are you doing this? You don't even know us. Michael considered his answer carefully. The truth was he wasn't entirely sure himself. What had begun as a simple act of dinner table charity had evolved into something more complex, a sense of connection, of responsibility, of something almost like purpose. Because I can, he said finally, and because no one should have to choose between their child's health and financial stability. Hannah studied his face, searching for hidden motives. Finding none, she nodded once, then turned her attention back to Noah as the nurse inserted an IV line into his tiny arm. Hours passed in the sterile hospital room. Noah's fever gradually subsided. His breathing eased, and eventually he fell into a peaceful sleep in the pediatric crib. Hannah remained vigilant beside him, refusing to leave even to find food for herself despite Michael's encouragement. I'm fine, she insisted, though the dark circles beneath her eyes told a different story. When did you last sleep? Michael asked, noticing how she braced herself against the crib rail when she thought he wasn't looking. Hannah shrugged. I doze when he does. It's enough. It clearly wasn't, but Michael recognized the stubborn determination in her posture. Instead of arguing, he stepped out and returned with sandwiches and coffee from the hospital cafeteria. Eat, he said, setting a sandwich beside her. You can't take care of him if you collapse. Hannah accepted the food with a small nod of thanks. As she ate, Michael noticed her glancing occasionally at his watch, the platinum timepiece that had been Sarah's last gift to him. It was from my wife, he said, answering the unasked question. Our last anniversary before the accident. Hannah's expression softened. Lily mentioned her mother was gone. I'm sorry. 5 years now. Michael twisted the watch on his wrist, a habit formed in countless meetings and sleepless nights. Car accident. Icy bridge, failed guardrail. She and our son died instantly. The words came out with practiced detachment, the way he'd learned to speak of it to avoid breaking down. But Hannah's quiet intake of breath made him realize what he'd revealed. You had a son. Her voice was gentle, free of the pity he'd come to dread from others. Michael nodded, finding it suddenly difficult to speak. He hadn't talked about Caleb to anyone in years, not to friends, not to colleagues, not even to Lily, who had been too young at the time to remember her baby brother. Caleb, he said finally. He was just 3 months old. Hannah's hand moved as if to reach for his, then stopped, returning to Noah's crib rail. That's why you're helping us, isn't it? Because of him. The question penetrated the careful walls Michael had built around his grief. Was that it? Was he trying to save the child he couldn't save, to help the family he had lost half of? Maybe he admitted. But it's also because you're doing everything right, everything possible, and it's still not enough. That's not a failure on your part. It's a failure of the systems that should support families like yours. Hannah turned back to Noah, adjusting his blanket unnecessarily. I was studying nursing when I got pregnant, had a scholarship, a plan. Then Noah's father left, my parents disowned me, and suddenly I was homeless and 7 months pregnant. She said it matter-of-factly without self-pity, but the stark reality of how quickly a life could unravel hung in the air between them. What would help most? Michael asked. Not just Band-Aids, but real change. Hannah looked surprised by the question, as if no one had ever asked what she actually needed rather than telling her what she should accept. Stability, she said after a moment, somewhere safe for Noah to sleep. A chance to finish my degree so I can support us properly. She shook her head slightly. But I'm not asking you for that. You've done more than enough already. Michael said nothing, but his mind was already working, calculating, planning. This wasn't charity. It was investment in potential, in future, in the kind of world he wanted Lily to inherit. Dawn was breaking when a nurse came to check Noah's vitals. The antibiotics were working. His fever had broken completely, and his breathing was clear and even. The doctor would release him that afternoon if his improvement continued. Hannah's relief was palpable, her exhaustion momentarily forgotten as she stroked Noah's cheek with gentle fingers. "We'll be okay now. Thank you for coming when I called." Michael watched them together, the fierce young mother and the resilient infant, and felt something shift inside him, like a door long closed beginning to open. Not replacing what he had lost, but creating space for something new. Outside the hospital room, unnoticed by either Michael or Hannah, a nurse's aide was watching with interest. She recognized the famous CEO from news coverage of Horizon Technologies' latest product launch. Discreetly, she raised her phone and snapped a photo, Michael standing protectively near Hannah and Noah, his expression unguarded in a way it never was in official photographs. By noon, the image would be circulating on social media. By evening, it would reach news outlets. By morning, speculation would be rampant about Michael's relationship with the young woman, about her background, about the baby in her arms. The storm was gathering, invisible on the horizon of that peaceful hospital morning. But for now, in the quiet of the pediatric ward, 3 lives had become unexpectedly intertwined: a grieving billionaire, a struggling young mother, and a baby with fever-bright eyes, who somehow bridged the vast divide between their worlds. When Noah was finally discharged, Michael drove them back to the Navy sedan in silence. Hannah seemed lost in thought, Noah sleeping peacefully against her chest after his ordeal. As they pulled up beside her car, Michael made a decision. "I have an apartment," he said quietly, "in one of my buildings downtown. It's furnished, secure, close to the hospital if Noah needs follow-up care. It's yours if you want it." Hannah stiffened, her expression immediately guarded. "I told you I'm not looking for—" "It's not charity," Michael interrupted. "It's a human right, a safe place to live, especially for a child." He hesitated, then added, "No strings attached, no expectations, just a safe place while you figure out your next steps." Hannah looked down at Noah, sleeping peacefully for the first time in days. Her resistance visibly wavered, maternal instinct warring with pride. "I can't pay rent. Not yet." "Consider it an investment in your nursing career," Michael said. "When you're finished with your degree, you can pay it forward however you see fit." The silence stretched between them, broken only by Noah's soft breathing. Finally, Hannah nodded once, a gesture of acceptance that clearly cost her considerably. "Thank you," she said simply, the words weighted with more than they could possibly express. As Michael drove away, leaving Hannah to gather what few possessions they had from the old sedan, he felt lighter than he had in years. Not happy exactly, the void left by Sarah and Caleb could never be truly filled, but purposeful, connected to something beyond the endless pursuit of business success. He did not notice the notification lighting up his phone, a message from his assistant, marked urgent, referencing a photo circulating online and requesting guidance on the company's response. That revelation, with all its complications, still lay ahead. For now, there was only the quiet certainty that he had taken a step towards something important. Not atonement, not replacement, but perhaps redemption of a kind he hadn't known he was seeking. The image spread like wildfire. By morning, Michael's phone wouldn't stop buzzing with notifications, calls from the PR team, texts from board members, emails from journalists requesting comment. On every social media platform, the photo told a compelling story. Billionaire CEO Michael Winters, standing protectively beside a young, clearly impoverished mother and her infant in a hospital room, his expression unguarded in a way the public had never seen. The headlines evolved by the hour. Tech mogul's midnight hospital run. Winters' secret family. Billionaire's mystery woman, charity or scandal. Each more speculative than the last, each driving conversation across business and entertainment outlets alike. Michael stared at the photo on his tablet screen, trying to see it through strangers' eyes. What story did they read in the careful way he stood near Hannah, without touching her, in the protective angle of his body and the uncharacteristic softness of his expression? Whatever narrative they constructed, it was almost certainly wrong and potentially damaging to both Hannah and his company. His assistant's voice came through the intercom. "Sir, the board is requesting an emergency conference call, and Ms. Daniels from PR says it's urgent." Michael set down his coffee cup, its contents long gone cold. "Tell them I'll join in 10 minutes. Upstairs, Lily was getting ready for school, Mrs. Chen helping her pack her lunch. She looked up as Michael entered the kitchen. "Is Noah feeling better? Can we visit him today?" The innocent question caught Michael off guard. He'd spent the early morning hours arranging for Hannah and Noah to move into the apartment he had offered, making sure it was stocked with essentials, ensuring security was in place to protect their privacy. In the process, he'd somehow overlooked the most important conversation, the one with his daughter. "Noah's doing much better," Michael said, sitting at the breakfast bar beside her, but I need to talk to you about something important." Lily's eyes widened slightly, recognizing her father's serious tone. "Is it about Hannah? I heard you leave last night." Michael nodded. "Hannah and Noah need a safe place to stay. I've offered them an apartment in one of our buildings, so they don't have to live in their car anymore." Lily's face brightened. "That's good, right?" "Yes, it's good. But some people who don't know the whole story might say unkind things about why I'm helping them." Lily frowned, processing this. "Because you're rich and she's not." The simplicity of her assessment made Michael wince. "Something like that. People sometimes make assumptions when they don't have all the facts." "That's stupid," Lily declared with a child's unwavering certainty. "You're helping because Noah needs a real bed and Hannah is nice." Michael felt a surge of pride in his daughter's moral clarity. "Exactly, but I wanted you to know what's happening in case you hear things at school or from friends." Lily nodded solemnly, then brightened. "Can I give Noah my old teddy bear, the one I don't sleep with anymore?" "I think he'd like that very much." The board meeting was precisely as uncomfortable as Michael had anticipated. On the video conference screen, 12 faces regarded him with expressions ranging from concern to barely concealed outrage. Victor Thornton, the board chairman, spoke first, his tone measured but cool. "Michael, while we all applaud your charitable instincts, the manner in which this situation has unfolded raises serious concerns about potential impact on shareholder value. Translation: explain yourself before we consider damage control." Michael kept his voice even. "The situation is straightforward. I encountered a young mother and her infant in difficult circumstances. I provided assistance, including medical care, when the child became seriously ill. That's the entirety of the story." Eleanor Harding, head of the audit committee, leaned forward. "The public perception is considerably more complicated. There are already rumors that the child might be yours." "Which is patently false and easily disproven," Michael countered. "Noah is 8 months old, or seen. Anyone with access to a calendar can verify that doesn't align with any narrative involving me." James Mercer, the newest board member, cleared his throat. "Nevertheless, Michael, the optics are problematic. A single man in your position becoming suddenly involved with a much younger woman of uncertain background. Shareholders are already expressing concern." Michael felt heat rising in his chest, a familiar pressure that preceded the rare occasions when his temper broke through his carefully maintained composure. "Let me be absolutely clear. I will not apologize for basic human decency. If helping a child with pneumonia and his mother find safe housing damages our optics, then perhaps we should reconsider what this company stands for." The silence that followed was heavy with unspoken tension. Finally, Victor spoke again. "No one is suggesting you shouldn't have helped Michael, but discretion would have been advisable. The board feels it would be best if you distanced yourself from this situation going forward. Make a donation to an appropriate charity if you wish, but direct involvement creates unnecessary complications." Michael's hand tightened around his pen. "I built this company to matter, not just to make money. If we've reached a point where compassion is seen as a liability, then perhaps it's time to reevaluate my own position." The implied threat hung in the air. Michael Winters still owned controlling interest in Horizon Technologies. If pushed, he could make changes that would affect everyone on the call. Victor backpedaled slightly. "No one is questioning your leadership, Michael. We're simply concerned about managing this situation appropriately. The meeting ended with an uneasy compromise. Michael would continue as CEO. The company would issue a brief statement expressing support for his personal charitable efforts, and the PR team would work to shift the narrative away from speculation toward Horizon's commitment to community support. As the call ended, Michael stared at the dark screen, aware that he'd won the battle, but the war was far from over. His phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "We've settled in. Thank you." Those four simple words somehow outweighed all the corporate politics of the morning. The apartment Michael had arranged for Hannah and Noah occupied the 15th floor of a security building in a quiet neighborhood. It wasn't one of his luxury properties, but a mid-range residential building that wouldn't draw attention, comfortable without being ostentatious, secure without being obvious. When he arrived that evening with Lily, he half expected Hannah to have changed her mind, to have disappeared back into the city's shadows rather than accept help that might compromise her independence. Instead, she opened the door with Noah on her hip, her hair pulled back in a neat ponytail, wearing what appeared to be a newly purchased but modestly priced blouse and jeans. "You came," she said, surprise evident in her tone. "I wasn't sure you would after." She gestured vaguely toward the world outside where their unexpected connection had become fodder for public consumption. Lily stepped forward, holding out a well-loved teddy bear with one slightly worn ear. "This is Mr. Buttons. He kept me safe when I was little, and now he can keep Noah safe." Hannah knelt to Lily's level, her expression softening. "That's very generous. Are you sure you want to give him away?" Lily nodded solemnly. "I'm too big for him now. Noah needs him more." The simple exchange seemed to break the tension. Hannah invited them inside, apologizing for the sparse furnishings despite the fact that she'd only been there for hours. The apartment was basic but comfortable, a living room with a sofa and coffee table, a small dining area, a kitchenette with essential appliances, and two bedrooms. What caught Michael's attention, however, were the small touches that Hannah had already added: a hand-drawn picture taped to the refrigerator, a small plant on the windowsill, a neatly folded blanket on the couch. She was making it a home, not just a shelter. Noah, now fully recovered from his illness, watched the visitors with bright, curious eyes. When Lily approached, he reached for her with surprising determination, tiny fingers grasping at the air. "He remembers you," Hannah said, allowing Lily to touch Noah's hand. "He doesn't usually take to strangers so quickly." Lily beamed with pride. "That's because we're friends. Can I show him Mr. Buttons?" As Lily carefully introduced the teddy bear to Noah, Hannah moved toward the kitchen, Michael following at a respectful distance. "I don't know how to thank you," she said quietly, her back to him as she filled a kettle. "This apartment, the supplies, everything." "You don't need to thank me," Michael replied. "I'm just glad Noah is recovering well." Hannah turned, her expression guarded. "I saw the news, the photo from the hospital. I'm sorry if it's causing problems for you." Michael waved away her concern. Corporate politics, nothing worth worrying about. Hannah's gaze was too perceptive to be fooled by his casual dismissal. "I heard your company's stock dropped 4 points yesterday after the photo went viral." And the fact that she was tracking Horizon's stock price caught Michael by surprise. This young woman continued to defy every expectation. "It'll recover," he said, with more confidence than he felt. "The market overreacts to everything these days." Hannah set out mugs for tea, her movements efficient and practiced. "I don't want to be the reason your company suffers. You have done too much for us already." "My company will be fine," Michael assured her, "and I haven't done nearly enough." Her eyes met his, searching for hidden meaning or agenda. Finding none, she nodded slightly. "I've been thinking about what happens next. I can't stay here indefinitely." "Why not?" The question came out more abruptly than Michael intended. Hannah's eyebrows lifted. "Because charity has limits. Because eventually Noah and I need to stand on our own. Because I had plans before everything fell apart, and I still want to finish what I started." Michael leaned against the counter, studying her. In the 3 days since their first meeting at Le Pavon, Hannah had shown a resilience and dignity that many executives he knew would envy. "Tell me about these plans." She hesitated, then reached into a drawer and withdrew a folded paper. It was a university transcript showing nearly completed coursework for a nursing degree with impressive grades across all subjects. "I was 3 semesters from finishing when I got pregnant," she explained. "Full scholarship work-study program at Memorial Hospital. I was going to specialize in pediatric care. Michael scanned the transcript, noting the consistent A's and B's. What happened? Hannah's expression tightened. Jason Noah's father was pre-med. We dated for almost a year. When I told him I was pregnant, he said it would ruin his career trajectory. Gave me money for an abortion, then blocked my number when I decided to keep the baby. She poured hot water into the mugs her movements controlled despite the painful topic. My parents are very religious, very traditional. When I told them, my father said I had dishonored the family and needed to correct my mistake if I wanted to stay under their roof. The matter-of-fact way she described such profound rejection made Michael's chest tighten. He thought of Lily trying to imagine any circumstance in which he could turn his back on her. None existed. So you left, he said quietly. Hannah nodded. Stayed with friends until that became awkward. Worked as a waitress until I started showing too much. Lived in a shelter until they reached their time limit. The car was actually a step up, something that was mine, that no one could make me leave. She handed Michael a mug of tea. I'm not telling you that it's for sympathy. I'm telling you because I need you to understand that I had a path before and I still want that path. I just need to find my way back to it. In that moment, Michael saw Hannah clearly not as a charity case, not as a public relations complication, but as someone whose determination matched his own, whose resilience in the face of setbacks surpassed anything his wealth had ever required of him. What do you need to get back on that path? He asked simply. Hannah's gaze was steady. Stability for Noah, a way to finish my degree, and eventually a job that lets me support us both properly. From the living room came the sound of Lily's delighted laugh, followed by Noah's happy babble. The two children had formed an instant connection, Lily showing the baby her drawings, while Noah responded with enthusiastic, if incomprehensible, commentary. My mom would have liked you because you make Daddy smile again. Lily's voice carried clearly from the other room, the innocent observation causing both adults to freeze momentarily. Hannah recovered first, a slight flush coloring her cheeks. She's a remarkable child. She is, Michael agreed, grateful for the change in subject. Sometimes I think she's raising me instead of the other way around. The evening progressed with unexpected ease. They ordered takeout, Michael careful to ask what Hannah preferred rather than simply deciding, and ate at the small dining table, Lily chattering about school, and Noah secured in a high chair Michael had arranged to be delivered. It was in its simplicity the most normal evening Michael had experienced in years. No business calls interrupting dinner, no distracted scrolling through emails, no agenda beyond the shared meal and conversation. He found himself relaxing in a way he rarely did, even at home. As they prepared to leave, Lily knelt to say goodbye to Noah, who had begun to doze in Hannah's arms. We'll come back soon, she promised the sleepy infant. Mr. Buttons will keep you safe until then. In the elevator, Lily leaned against Michael's side, tired but content. Hannah is nice, she said simply, and Noah looks like he smiles with his whole body. He does, doesn't he? Michael agreed, realizing he'd noticed the same thing, the full-body joy the baby exhibited when pleased, so different from the restrained expressions of the adults in his usual orbit. Can they come live with us? Lily asked as they reached the car. We have lots of extra rooms. The question caught Michael off guard. They have their own place now, sweetheart. They don't need to live with us. Lily frowned slightly. But don't you think Hannah would be a good mom for me, and Noah could be my brother? Michael's heart stuttered in his chest. Lily, it's not. Hannah and I are just friends. She's not looking for. My friend Emma got a new mom when her dad married Miss Taylor. Lily continued, undeterred by her father's discomfort. And Emma says it's really nice to have a mom again. Michael struggled to find the right words, acutely aware that his response would shape his daughter's understanding of relationships and responsibility. Hannah is focusing on taking care of Noah and finishing her education, he said finally. And we're helping as friends, not because we're going to become a family. Lily's sigh suggested she found adults needlessly complicated. Okay, but I still think she'd be a good mom. The conversation lingered in Michael's mind as they drove home through the city's evening traffic. When had Lily started thinking about needing a mother figure? Had he been so focused on providing material security that he'd missed her emotional needs? And why had her innocent suggestion created such a complex reaction within him? These questions followed him into restless dreams, where Sarah appeared not as she had in life, but as an observer, watching him with Hannah and the children, her expression unreadable, but somehow giving permission. The next morning brought fresh complications. Michael's phone rang before dawn, his head of security voice tight with urgency. "Sir, there's a situation at Ms. Carter's apartment building." Michael was instantly alert. What kind of situation? A man claiming to be the father of Ms. Carter's child. He's demanding to see her, becoming aggressive with the doorman. "Police have been called, but I thought you should know immediately." Michael was already pulling on clothes, calculating the fastest route at this hour. "I'm on my way. Make sure she stays inside her apartment with the door locked." The security team had done their job well by the time Michael arrived. The police had removed the man from the premises, but not before he'd created enough of a scene to draw attention from early rising neighbors. In the building manager's office, Michael found Hannah sitting stiffly in a chair, Noah asleep against her shoulder. Her face was pale but composed, her posture rigidly upright. "Are you all right?" Michael asked, taking the chair beside her rather than hovering over her. Hannah nodded, once her jaw tight. "I'm fine. Noah slept through everything, thankfully." The building manager, a competent woman in her 50s, provided the details. The individual identified himself as Jason Merrick. He was quite intoxicated and making threats about taking the child. When informed that he could not enter without resident permission, he became belligerent. "How did he find this address?" Michael asked, the question directed at no one in particular. Hannah's laugh held no humor. "The same way everyone else did. That hospital photo is everywhere. It wouldn't take much detective work to figure out which buildings you own, and security here confirms they have had paparazzi watching the entrance since yesterday." The implications settled heavily between them. The privacy Michael had hoped to provide was already compromised. "He said he has rights," Hannah continued, her voice steady, but her fingers tightening protectively around Noah. "He said if I try to keep his son from him, he'll take me to court." The building manager excused herself tactfully, leaving them alone in the office. "Has he ever shown interest in Noah before?" Michael asked, already calculating legal strategies. Hannah's expression hardened. "Not once. Not during my pregnancy, not after the birth, not during all the months we've been struggling. But now that there's a billionaire in the picture, suddenly he's concerned about his parental rights." The bitterness in her tone was justified, but Michael recognized the fear beneath it. "He has no case," he assured her. "He abandoned you both, provided no support." "That doesn't matter in family court," Hannah countered. "Biology matters. And he's from a good family, pre-med student, while I'm—" She gestured at herself, words failing. "While you're what?" Michael challenged. "A dedicated mother, a nursing student with excellent grades, someone who's sacrificed everything to keep her child safe and healthy." Hannah's eyes met his vulnerability showing through her composed facade. "Someone living on charity in an apartment she can't afford, with no job, no degree, and no family support. Do you really think a judge would choose me over him if he decides to fight?" The question hung between them, its weight amplified by the sleeping child in her arms, all innocent, unaware that his future might become a battlefield. "If he decides to fight," Michael said with quiet intensity, "then we fight back, with every resource available." Something shifted in Hannah's expression, not quite trust, not yet, but perhaps the recognition that she wasn't alone in this battle. "I should never have called you that night at the hospital. I've dragged you into a mess that isn't yours." "I walked into this with my eyes open," Michael countered, "and I don't regret it for a moment." And the sincerity in his voice surprised even him. Despite the complications, professional, personal, public, Michael couldn't imagine having made any other choice that rainy night outside Le Pavon. Back at his office later that morning, Michael convened a meeting with his legal team. Without divulging more personal details than necessary, he outlined the situation and his expectations. "I want the best family law attorney in the state retained by end of day," he instructed. "I want background on Jason Merrick, financial status, employment history, any criminal record or civil disputes. And I want security protocols upgraded at the apartment building." His general counsel, Patricia Alvarez, made notes with practiced efficiency. "Are we representing Ms. Carter directly, or setting up a separate legal entity to fund her representation?" It was a good question, one that reflected the complicated nature of his involvement. "Set up a separate entity," Michael decided. "She needs to be the client, not me, but make it clear that all expenses are covered." Patricia nodded, then hesitated. "Michael, I have to ask, what exactly is your relationship with Ms. Carter?" The question wasn't inappropriate coming from his chief legal officer, but it still made Michael bristle. She's someone I'm helping. That's all anyone needs to know. Patricia's expression remained professional, but concerned. The board is already nervous about public perception. If there's anything that could further complicate the situation, there isn't, Michael interrupted. And even if there were, my personal life is not subject to board approval. The meeting concluded shortly after leaving Michael alone with thoughts he'd been avoiding since that first night at the restaurant. What exactly was developing between himself and Hannah Charity friendship, or something more complicated that neither of them was ready to acknowledge? The question followed him through the day, through meetings and conference calls, through a tense conversation with his PR team about narrative management, through an update from security that paparazzi were now staking out both his home and Hannah's apartment building. That evening, he received another text from Hannah. Noah keeps asking for Lee Lai. Any chance of a play date this weekend? The simple message made he smile, the first genuine smile of a difficult day. He texted back, she's been asking the same thing. Saturday morning at the park near your building. The response came quickly. Perfect. And Michael, thank you for everything. 3 simple words that somehow made the day's complications recede in importance. Saturday dawned clear and mild, the kind of autumn day that hinted at summer's warmth while carrying the crisp promise of fall. Michael and Lily arrived at the park to find Hannah already there. Noah secured in a baby swing, his delighted laughter carrying across the playground. Lily broke away, running toward them with uninhibited joy. Noah, we came to play. The morning unfolded with unexpected simplicity. While the children played, Lily pushing Noah gently in the swing, showing him how to feel the texture of leaves, helping him toddle across the grass with supported steps, Michael and Hannah sat on a nearby bench, conversation flowing more easily than either might have expected. Hannah had news she'd contacted her former university about re-enrolling to complete her nursing degree. They're willing to work with me, she explained, hope coloring her voice for the first time since he'd met her. There's a program for students with children, flexible scheduling, even on-site childcare during classes. That's fantastic, Michael said, genuinely pleased. When would you start? January term, if everything goes through. I'd have to take out loans for the remaining tuition since my scholarship expired, but it's manageable with income-based repayment after graduation. Michael wanted to offer to cover the tuition outright, but sensed that would cross a boundary Hannah wasn't ready to broach. Instead, he asked about her planned specialization, listening as she described her interest in pediatric emergency care with knowledge and passion that reminded him of his own early days building Horizon. You'll be an exceptional nurse, he said when she finished. Any hospital would be lucky to have you. Hannah looked away, but not before Michael caught the slight flush of her cheeks. I just want to make a stable life for Noah. Everything else is secondary. They were interrupted by Lily's excited call. Daddy, Hannah, look what Noah can do. They turned to see Lily standing a few feet away from Noah, who was balanced on unsteady legs, swaying slightly, but remaining upright. As they watched, he took one wobbling step toward Lily, then another, his face a study in concentration. He's walking. Hannah's voice held wonder and a touch of maternal pride. Almost, Michael agreed, watching as Noah managed a third step before plopping down on the grass, apparently satisfied with his achievement. I missed his first rollover, Hannah said quietly. I was working a double shift at the diner. The babysitter told me about it when I picked him up. The simple statement contained volumes, the sacrifices of a single mother, the milestones observed by strangers, the constant tug-of-war between providing and parenting. You won't miss the next one, Michael said with certainty. Whatever happens, you'll be there for all the important moments from now on. Hannah's gaze held his for a long moment, searching for the truth behind the promise. Whatever she found seemed to satisfy her because she nodded once before turning back to watch Noah, who was now attempting to stand again with Lily's encouragement. The peaceful morning was shattered by the unmistakable click of a camera shutter. Michael turned sharply to see a photographer with a telephoto lens partially concealed behind a tree some distance away. Hannah noticed it too, her body tensing instantly. We should go. Michael was already on his feet, an anger rising at this invasion of what should have been a private moment. Wait here, Budquine. Before Hannah could protest, he was striding toward the photographer, who immediately began backing away. Delete those photos, Michael demanded when he reached the man. The photographer, young, probably freelance, clutched his camera protectively. Public park, man. I'm not breaking any laws. Those children have a right to privacy, Michael countered, his voice low but intense. Delete the photos or I'll have my legal team make your life extremely uncomfortable. The photographer hesitated, clearly weighing the potential payout against the risk of crossing Michael Winters. Finally, he shrugged. Whatever, man, not worth the hassle. He made a show of deleting the images from his camera, then retreated toward the park entrance. When Michael returned to the bench, Hannah was already gathering their things, her expression closed and guarded once more. We should get Noah home for his nap. The easy companionship of the morning had evaporated, replaced by the stark reality of their complicated situation. Michael helped collect Noah's toys, acutely aware of how quickly their fragile normalcy had been disrupted. As they walked back toward Hannah's apartment building, Lily held Hannah's free hand while Michael carried Noah, who had grown tired after his walking efforts. The tableau they presented, man, woman, two children, might have appeared to any observer as a typical family outing, except for the tension evident in Hannah's posture and the watchful way Michael scanned their surroundings for other photographers. At the building entrance, Hannah reached for Noah. Thank you for today. Lily, thank you for playing with Noah. The formality in her tone told Michael something had shifted, some boundary had been redrawn. Hannah, about what happened. It's fine, she interrupted. I just need to be more careful, we both do. Before he could respond, she had disappeared inside, with Noah leaving Michael and Lily on the sidewalk. The morning's warmth somehow faded despite the persistent sunshine. Is Hannah mad at us? Lily asked as they walked back to their car. Michael considered how to answer. Not at us, just at the situation. Sometimes adults get frustrated when things are complicated. Lily processed this with a child's directness. But being friends isn't complicated. She likes us, and we like her and Noah. Out of the mouths of babes, Michael thought not for the first time. You're right, sweetheart. The friendship isn't complicated. It's everything around it that gets messy. The incident at the park marked a turning point. Hannah began limiting their interactions, polite but brief texts updating him on Noah's progress, declining invitations for Lily to visit, maintaining a careful distance that Michael found himself unexpectedly reluctant to accept. At work, the situation continued to evolve. The board remained uneasy, shareholders asked questions, competitors whispered about Michael's distraction. But something else was happening too. Applications to Horizon's philanthropic foundation had increased dramatically. Employees were volunteering for community outreach programs at record rates, and a small but vocal group of investors was praising the company's renewed commitment to social responsibility. Michael's assistant placed a folder on his desk one afternoon. The latest press clippings, sir. There's been an interesting shift in the narrative. Inside, Michael found articles with headlines like, Tech CEO's personal mission inspires corporate change, and Winters' example prompts industry-wide giving increase. One business magazine had run a feature titled, The Humanity Factor, How Michael Winters is Changing Tech's Soul. It was a fascinating reversal. What had begun as potential scandal was transforming into something like moral leadership. Michael wasn't naive enough to believe the transformation was complete or universal, but it was a reminder that public opinion was neither monolithic nor predictable. A week after the park incident, Michael received an unexpected call from his security team. Sir, Ms. Carter asked us to inform you that she's received a legal notice, a petition for paternity and shared custody filed by Jason Merrick. The news hit like a physical blow. When is the hearing going? 3 weeks from now. Preliminary hearing only, but she seemed quite distressed. Michael thanked him and immediately called the family law attorney he'd retained. What are we looking at here? The attorney's assessment was measured but concerning. Biological fathers have strong rights in this state, even those who've been absent. If he can present himself as stable and reformed, and if he can paint Miss Carter as financially dependent and unstable, he could potentially get significant visitation or even shared custody. He abandoned the mem, Michael said flatly, left her pregnant and alone, which is morally reprehensible but not legally determinative. The attorney replied, what matters now is creating the strongest possible case for Ms. Carter as the more suitable parent. Michael ended the call and sat in his office as evening shadows lengthened across the floor. The legal battle ahead would be challenging enough, But something else troubled him more deeply, the realization that Hannah might see this development as further evidence that his involvement in her life had created more problems than solutions. His phone rang again, Hannah this time. He answered immediately. I heard about the filing. I'm sorry. He wants shared custody. Hannah's voice was tight with controlled emotion. He's never even held Noah, never changed a diaper or soothed a fever or spent a sleepless night walking the floor with him. And now he wants to play arm. We'll fight it, Michael promised, every step of the way. Hannah was quiet for a moment then. The attorney you arranged spoke with me today. She says his family has hired very aggressive counsel. They're already building a case around my unstable housing situation and questionable relationship with a wealthy benefactor. The implication was clear. Michael's involvement was being weaponized against her. Hannah, it's not your fault, she interrupted. You've done nothing but help us. But the reality is your presence in our lives is now being used against me. Jason's lawyer is suggesting I'm trading on our relationship for financial gain. The accusation was so baseless, so contrary to everything Hannah had demonstrated about her character that Michael felt physically ill. That's absurd. Anyone who spends 5 minutes with you knows that's not who you are. But the judge won't spend 5 minutes with me, Hannah countered. They'll see documents and declarations and evidence of a young single mother living in an apartment she can't possibly afford on her own, suddenly connected to a billionaire with no clear explanation. The truth of her assessment hung between them. In trying to help, had he inadvertently made her situation worse? What do you want to do? Michael asked, finally prepared to accept whatever boundaries she needed to establish. Hannah's voice steadied. I want to win this case. I want to protect my son, and I want to stop hiding as if I've done something wrong when I haven't. Her resolve stirred something in Michael, admiration, respect, and something deeper he wasn't ready to name. Then we faced this head-on, together. The weeks leading up to the hearing passed in a blur of legal preparation. The attorney interviewed Hannah extensively, building a case that emphasized her dedication as a mother, her educational goals, and her plans for financial independence. Michael provided sworn statements about her character and Noah's well-being, careful to frame his involvement as philanthropic rather than personal to avoid fueling speculation. Meanwhile, their private investigators uncovered troubling patterns in Jason Merrick's recent behavior. Sudden interest in Noah coinciding precisely with the viral hospital photo conversations with tabloid reporters about selling his exclusive story credit card charges at expensive restaurants and clubs that contradicted his court filings claiming financial hardship. 2 days before the hearing, Michael received an unexpected call from the courthouse. The clerk's voice was apologetic but firm. Mr. Winters, Judge Harriman has requested your presence at tomorrow's pre-hearing conference regarding Carter versus Merrick. Michael frowned. I'm not a party to the case. Nevertheless, the judge has indicated your testimony may be relevant to establishing the living situation of the minor child. Attendance is strongly encouraged. The subtext was clear. His absence would be noted and potentially held against Hannah. I'll be there. The pre-hearing conference took place in the judge's chambers rather than open court, small mercy in a process that already felt invasively public. Judge Harriman was a woman in her 60s with shrewd eyes and a reputation for cutting through theatrics to focus on children's welfare. Hannah sat beside her attorney, her posture perfect, but her knuckles white where her hands clasped in her lap. Across the table, Jason Merrick and his counsel presented a carefully crafted image of responsible adulthood. Jason in a conservative suit, hair neatly trimmed, expression appropriately serious. Michael took the remaining seat beside Hannah's attorney, acutely aware that his presence altered the power dynamics in the room in ways that might help or harm Hannah's case. Judge Harriman wasted no time on preliminaries. I've reviewed the initial filings from both parties. Before we proceed to formal hearing, I want to clarify a few points about the child's current living situation. Her gaze fixed on Hannah. Ms. Carter, you reside in an apartment building owned by Horizon Properties, a subsidiary of Mr. Winters' company, correct? Hannah nodded. Yes, Your Honor. And what is the nature of your relationship with Mr. Winters? The direct question hung in the air. Hannah's attorney started to interject, but Hannah spoke first, her voice clear and steady. Mr. Winters helped my son and me when we had nowhere else to turn. He provided medical care when Noah was seriously ill, and safe housing when we were living in my car. He is a friend who stepped in when Noah's father wouldn't. The simplicity and dignity of her response seemed to register with the judge, whose expression remained neutral but attentive. Mr. Merrick, Judge Harriman turned to Jason. Your petition states you were unaware of your son's dire circumstances until recently. Can you explain why, as his father, you had no knowledge of his living situation? Jason shifted slightly, his confident facade showing its first crack. Ms. Carter cut off communication after informing me of the pregnancy. I didn't know where she was or how to reach her. Hannah's attorney leaned forward. Your Honor, we have phone records showing Mr. Merrick blocked Ms. Carter's number after suggesting she terminate the pregnancy. We also have evidence of Ms. Carter's attempts to contact him through mutual friends, all of which were ignored. Judge Harriman's expression hardened almost imperceptibly. Mr. Merrick, are you currently employed? I'm in my final year of medical school, Jason replied. My parents are supporting me financially until I begin my residency. And if granted shared custody, where would the child reside during your parenting time? Jason glanced at his attorney before answering. At my parents' home initially. They have plenty of space and are eager to meet their grandson. Judge Harriman made a note, then turned back to Hannah. Ms. Carter, what are your plans for financial independence? The current arrangement with Mr. Winters cannot presumably continue indefinitely. It was the question Michael had been dreading, the one that forced Hannah to defend her integrity while simultaneously acknowledging her dependence. Hannah sat straighter, meeting the judge's gaze directly. I've been accepted to return to my nursing program in January. I'll complete my degree within 18 months, after which I have a conditional employment offer from Memorial Hospital. In the meantime, I'm working part-time as a medical office assistant while Noah attends the university's subsidized childcare program. The new information caught Michael by surprise. Hannah hadn't mentioned securing employment or the conditional hospital offer. She had been building her independence quietly, systematically, without fanfare or requests for additional help. Something in Judge Harriman's expression shifted slightly, not quite approval, but perhaps recognition of Hannah's determination. She turned to Michael. Mr. Winters, I understand your involvement in this situation began recently. What is your interest in these proceedings? Michael chose his words carefully, aware that anything he said would be scrutinized for hidden meaning or motive. My interest is solely in the welfare of Noah Carter. I've witnessed firsthand Ms. Carter's extraordinary dedication as a mother under the most challenging circumstances. She has never asked for anything for herself, only for what would benefit her child's health and safety. Jason's attorney interjected smoothly. Your Honor, Mr. Winters' unusual interest in Ms. Carter and her child raises legitimate questions about the nature of their relationship and its impact on the child's stability. Before the judge could respond, the door to the chambers opened and a court clerk entered, handing Judge Harriman a folder. The additional documentation you requested, Your Honor. The judge reviewed the contents, her expression unreadable. Finally, she looked up, addressing both parties. I've received some concerning information regarding recent communications between Mr. Merrick and several tabloid publications. Jason paled visibly, his attorney straightening in alarm. Judge Harriman continued, her tone hardening. It appears Mr. Merrick has been negotiating payment for his exclusive story about Ms. Carter and Mr. Winters, with specific reference to using any custody granted to provide insider access to the child. The revelation landed like a thunderbolt in the quiet chamber. Hannah's hand flew to her mouth, her eyes widening with horror at the thought of Noah being exploited for publicity. Judge Harriman's gaze fixed on Jason with unmistakable disapproval. Mr. Merrick, this court takes a very dim view of parents who attempt to monetize their children or use custody proceedings as leverage for financial gain. Jason's attorney attempted damage control. Your Honor, if such communications occurred, they were ill-advised but do not reflect my client's genuine desire to establish a relationship with his son. The judge held up a hand, silencing further explanation. I've seen enough to make a preliminary determination. The formal hearing will proceed as scheduled, but I am issuing a temporary order, maintaining primary physical custody with Ms. Carter, and denying visitation to Mr. Merrick pending further investigation into these allegations. She turned to Hannah, her expression softening slightly. Septos. Carter, I commend your efforts to create stability for your child under difficult circumstances. This court recognizes that parenthood is demonstrated through consistent presence and sacrifice, not mere biological connection. As they left the chambers, Hannah stood shakily, emotion finally breaking through her composed facade. In the hallway outside, away from the formal setting of the judge's chambers, she turned to Michael, her eyes bright with unshed tears. "She believed me," Hannah whispered, as if afraid to say it too loudly. "She actually saw me, not just my circumstances." Michael resisted the urge to embrace her, acutely aware of their public surroundings and the scrutiny they were under. "Of course she did. Anyone who truly sees you recognizes your strength." Hannah glanced back toward the chambers. "Did you know about Jason trying to sell stories about Noah?" Michael shook his head. "Not specifically, though the investigators had flagged his sudden financial activities. The judge must have requested the communication records independently." Hannah's expression hardened as she looked down the hallway where Jason and his attorney were engaged in tense conversation. "He never wanted Noah. Not when I was pregnant, not after he was born. The only thing that changed was you. Your name, your money, your attention." The bitter truth of her assessment hung between them. In some twisted way, Michael's attempt to help had created this new threat to Hannah and Noah's security. "I'm sorry," he said quietly. "If my involvement has made things more complicated." Hannah's eyes snapped back to his sudden fierceness, replacing vulnerability. "Don't you dare apologize for helping us. Not now, not ever. What Jason is doing is on him, not you." Her vehemence caught Michael off guard. This was a different Hannah than he'd first met outside Le Pavon, still determined, still dignified, but now with an edge of righteous anger that transformed her quiet strength into something formidable. "Noah and I would still be living in that car if you hadn't stopped that night," she continued. "He might not have survived that fever. I'll never regret accepting your help, whatever complications come with it." Something shifted between them in that moment, an acknowledgement that whatever had brought them together, whatever kept them connected, it had become more than charity, more than obligation, more than the simple impulse of human kindness on a rainy night. As they walked toward the elevator, Hannah's mother appeared at the corridor's end, a slender woman in her 50s with Hannah's same blue eyes, her expression a complex mixture of uncertainty and determination. Behind her stood an older man with graying hair and a rigid posture that suggested both discomfort and resolve. Hannah froze her breath, catching audibly. "Mom, Dad." Her mother stepped forward hesitantly. "Hannah, we saw the court listing. We wanted to be here." The silence that followed was heavy with years of absence and unspoken words. Michael stepped back slightly, giving Hannah space for this unexpected reunion. Hannah's voice, when she finally spoke, carried a tremble she couldn't quite conceal. "You're 3 years too late." Her father moved forward, then standing beside his wife. "We were wrong," he said simply, the words clearly costing him considerable effort. "Too proud, too afraid of what people would think. And we lost you anyway." Hannah's mother took another step closer, her eyes fixed on Noah, who watched the strangers with curious attention from Hannah's arms. Is that our grandson?" The naked longing in her voice cracked something in Hannah's carefully maintained composure. Tears spilled onto her cheeks as she nodded wordlessly. Her mother reached out tentatively, her hand stopping just short of touching Noah's small foot. "He has your eyes, the same blue your father fell in love with." Hannah's father cleared his throat, emotion making his voice rougher than intended. "We don't expect forgiveness, Hannah. We don't deserve it. But if there's any chance at all, to know our grandson, to be part of your lives again." The unfinished plea hung in the air between them. Hannah stood frozen, years of hurt and abandonment warring with the undeniable pull of family, of shared blood and history. Michael watched, bearing witness to this raw moment of potential reconciliation, aware that he was both outsider and catalyst, his presence having somehow precipitated this reunion through the public attention that had followed their connection. Finally, Hannah shifted Noah in her arms, turning him slightly toward her parents. "His name is Noah. He's 8 months old. He just started walking last week, and he loves mashed potatoes more than anything in the world." The simple introduction, neither full acceptance nor rejection, was a beginning, a crack in the wall of estrangement that had separated them. Her mother's eyes filled with tears as her father nodded, accepting this small offering with profound gratitude. "He's beautiful," her mother whispered. "Perfect." In that courthouse corridor with late afternoon sunlight, streaming through high windows, something broken began the slow process of mending. Not erased, not forgotten, but perhaps in time forgiven. Michael stepped further back, giving the family space for this delicate moment of reconnection. As he did, he caught sight of a figure watching from the far end of the hallway, Jason Merrick, his expression a toxic mixture of thwarted entitlement and calculation. Their eyes met briefly across the distance, and in that moment Michael understood with perfect clarity that the battle for Noah's future was far from over. Whatever victory they had won today was merely the opening round in what might become a protracted war. But looking back at Hannah now cautiously allowing her mother to touch Noah's hand while her father stood watchful and uncertain beside them, Michael felt a surge of determination that eclipsed even his most ambitious business conquests. Some things were worth fighting for, worth risking everything to protect. And somehow, against all expectation, Hannah and Noah had become those things to him. The October sky stretched clear and bright above the woody leaves turning gold and crimson along the tree-lined avenues. 3 months had passed since the courthouse confrontation, a season of cautious rebuilding and unexpected challenges. Michael guided his car through the Sunday morning traffic, Lily chattering excitedly in the back seat about their planned day at the Botanical Gardens. "Do you think Noah will like the butterfly exhibit I read, that babies can see colors really well?" Lily asked, clutching a picture book she'd selected specifically to share with Noah. Michael smiled at his daughter's reflection in the rearview mirror. "I'm sure he'll love it. 8-month-olds are fascinated by movement and bright colors." "He's 9 months now, Daddy," Lily corrected with the solemn precision of childhood. "His birthday is 3 days before mine, remember." The casual way Lily had incorporated Hannah and Noah into their lives, marking Noah's monthly milestones, anticipating his developmental stages, creating her own mental family calendar that included them, gave Michael pause. The boundaries he'd tried to maintain for professional and protective reasons were meaningless to his daughter, who saw only the people she'd come to care about. They pulled into the parking lot of Hannah's apartment building, which had become a regular weekend meeting point. Security had been upgraded, a necessary precaution after Jason's continued attempts to gain access, each one increasingly desperate as his legal options narrowed. The formal custody hearing had concluded a month earlier with a decisive ruling in Hannah's favor, granting Jason only limited supervised visitation that he had yet to exercise. Hannah waited in the lobby, Noah perched on her hip, both dressed for the mild autumn day. The changes in Hannah were subtle but significant, her posture more relaxed, her smile coming more readily, her clothing simple but new. She had begun part-time work at a medical office while preparing to return to her nursing program, establishing the independence she so fiercely valued. Noah spotted Lily and began bouncing excitedly in Hannah's arms, his face lighting with recognition. "Lee," he called, one of the handful of words he'd mastered in recent weeks. Lily beamed with pride at being one of Noah's first words, rushing forward to greet him with the exuberant affection of a self-appointed big sister. "We're going to see butterflies today, Noah." Hundreds of them. The Botanical Gardens spread across 30 acres at the city's edge, a sanctuary of cultivated beauty that seemed worlds away from urban life. They wandered through winding paths lined with fall-blooming flowers, Noah alternating between toddling a few determined steps and being carried when his enthusiasm exceeded his stamina. In the butterfly pavilion, Noah's delight was absolute. He stood transfixed as iridescent wings fluttered around him, his small face a portrait of wonder. When a blue morpho butterfly momentarily landed on his outstretched finger, his astonished laugh echoed through the humid air. "His first butterfly," Hannah said softly, standing close enough to Michael that he could detect the faint scent of her shampoo. "Another milestone I won't miss." The simple statement carried the weight of every moment she'd sacrificed during their months of hardship, the first she'd entrusted to babysitters while working double shifts, the developmental leaps witnessed by strangers because survival demanded her absence. Michael wanted to reach for her hand, but hesitated, still uncertain about the unspoken boundaries between them. Instead, he asked, "How are things with your parents?" Hannah's expression grew contemplative. "Complicated. They're trying, especially my mother. They watch Noah one afternoon a week while I work. My father is less comfortable. He sits across the room like he's afraid to get too close, but I catch him watching Noah when he thinks I'm not looking." "Reconciliation takes time," Michael offered. The important thing is they're making the effort. Hannah nodded her gaze following Noah as Lily carefully guided him toward a flowering plant where several butterflies had gathered. I haven't forgiven them completely, not yet. But seeing Noah with them, having family for him beyond just me, it matters more than my pride. Their peaceful afternoon was interrupted by the buzz of Michael's phone. He glanced at the screen, frowning at the message from his assistant. Urgent board requesting immediate conference call. Victor threatening vote of no confidence. Hannah noticed his expression. Work crisis, boy. Michael silenced the phone, pushing away the intrusion of corporate politics. Nothing that can't wait until tomorrow. Hannah's gaze was too perceptive to be fooled. Michael, if you need to go. I don't, he interrupted, surprising himself with the certainty in his voice. Not today. The simple prioritization, family over business, present art over corporate maneuvering, felt like a declaration, though, to whom or of what remained undefined. They finished their circuit of the gardens with a picnic lunch in a secluded grove. Lily had appointed herself Noah's official entertainer, showing him how to make leaf rubbings and identifying squirrels with the authoritative confidence of an 8-year-old nature expert. Watching them together, Hannah grew quiet, a shadow crossing her features, despite the beautiful day. Sometimes I worry about how attached Noah is becoming to Lily. To both of you, really. The admission hung between them, touching on the uncertainty that had lingered unspoken through months of careful friendship. Michael kept his voice neutral, though his pulse quickened. Why is that a concern? Hannah folded and refolded the edge of the picnic blanket, organizing her thoughts. Because I don't know what this is, what we're doing, where it's going. And Noah's too young to understand conditional relationships or temporary arrangements. The directness of her concern struck Michael with unexpected force. Was that how she viewed their connection, as conditional, temporary, bound to end when its practical utility expired? Is that what you think this is? He asked quietly, gesturing toward the children playing nearby. A temporary arrangement. Hannah met his gaze, vulnerability and caution warring in her expression. I think it's undefined, and undefined things tend to dissolve when circumstances change. Michael recognized the protective instinct behind her words, the single mother preparing for disappointment, the woman who had been abandoned before creating emotional safeguards against repetition of that pain. Hannah, he began, then paused, searching for words that wouldn't sound like empty reassurance. I can't predict the future, but I can tell you that Lily and I aren't in your lives temporarily. Whatever evolves or doesn't evolve between us, that commitment isn't conditional. Something in Hannah's posture eased slightly, though her expression remained guarded. You should know that I found an apartment I can afford near the university. It's small, but it's within my budget with my part-time salary. I've put down a deposit. The announcement caught Michael off guard, a reminder that Hannah's drive for independence remained paramount despite their growing closeness. That's congratulations. When would you move? December, before the spring semester starts. She studied his reaction carefully. I thought you'd be relieved. No more complications for your board to worry about. No more photographers camping outside your building. Is that what you think I want, to distance myself from the complications you and Noah represent? Hannah's gaze dropped to her hands. I think you've been extraordinarily generous. I think you've done more than anyone could reasonably expect. And I think at some point that generosity has to have limits. Michael felt a surge of frustration at her persistent misreading of his motives, of the meaning her presence had taken in his life. Did it ever occur to you that you and Noah might be more than an obligation to me, to Lily? Before Hannah could respond, Lily's excited call drew their attention. Daddy! Hannah, look! Noah's chasing butterflies! The moment passed, the deeper conversation deferred as they turned to watch Noah's determined pursuit of an orange monarch fluttering just beyond his reach, his face alight with concentration and joy. Later that evening, after dropping Hannah and Noah at their apartment, Michael faced the board's emergency meeting with a clarity that surprised even him. The conference call connected him to 11 grim-faced executives, their concerns laid out in stark financial terms: stock volatility, investor anxiety, competitive positioning, all allegedly compromised by Michael's personal distractions. Victor Thornton delivered the ultimatum with practiced corporate diplomacy. The board feels that your recent involvement has become inconsistent with your fiduciary responsibilities to shareholders. We're prepared to offer a generous transition package if you'll consider stepping into a chairman role with day-to-day operations transferred to a new CEO. Michael let the silence stretch, aware that each board member was watching for signs of the anger or defensiveness they expected. Instead, he felt an unexpected lightness, as if a burden he hadn't recognized was lifting. You know what built this company, Victor? Not maximizing quarterly returns or strategic acquisitions. It was solving real problems that matter to real people. Somewhere along the way, we seem to have forgotten that. He leaned closer to the camera, his voice level but intense. If helping a homeless mother and child find stability is considered detrimental to our corporate image, then perhaps our corporate values need reassessment, not my priorities. Victor's expression tightened. This isn't about charity, Michael. It's about focus and perception. The market has responded quite favorably to our expanded foundation work, Michael interrupted. Our employee satisfaction metrics are at an all-time high, and applications to work here have increased 40% since we launched the housing initiative. He paused, allowing his next words to land with deliberate weight. But if the board feels my leadership no longer aligns with company direction, I'm prepared to accept that, not as a departure, but as an opportunity to realign Horizon with its founding mission: technology that improves lives, not just balance sheets. The implied threat was clear. Michael retained enough voting shares to make significant changes to the board itself if pushed. The meeting concluded without a formal vote, an uneasy truce established through the implicit recognition of mutual vulnerability. As Michael ended the call, his phone lit with a text from Hannah. Noah wouldn't sleep until I promised to thank you for the butterflies. Sweet dreams. The simple message, coupled with a photo of Noah clutching the butterfly book Lily had given him, provided a perspective that no boardroom strategy session could match. Whatever professional price he might pay for the choices he'd made, moments like these rendered the calculus simple. November brought colder winds and new developments. Hannah's nursing program acceptance became official, her financial aid package confirmed. She began spending evenings studying, refreshing the knowledge base she'd been forced to abandon 2 years earlier. Noah thrived in the part-time daycare program, his vocabulary expanding weekly, his personality blossoming in an environment rich with stability and stimulation. Michael faced his own professional evolution. After the failed coup attempt, he'd initiated a strategic review of Horizon's priorities, channeling more resources toward the company's foundation and launching a pilot program for affordable housing development in partnership with city agencies. The financial press remained divided on these initiatives, some praising the company's socially responsible pivot, others questioning the impact on short-term profits. Through it all, the four of them continued their weekend rituals, parks and museums, quiet dinners, and story times, the careful construction of shared memories and traditions. Neither Michael nor Hannah spoke further about her planned move or the undefined nature of their relationship, each seemingly content to exist in the present tense while the future remained unwritten. Until the morning, Michael's phone rang with a call from Hannah's number, her voice tight with controlled panic. Michael, I need your help. Jason was waiting outside the medical office when I arrived for work. He tried to take Noah from me. Michael was already grabbing his keys, heart pounding. Are you safe? Where are you now? We're inside the building. Security removed him, but he was shouting that he had rights and that he'd be back with police. Stay there, I'm calling the lawyer and coming to you. The next hours unfolded in a blur of legal maneuvers and security arrangements. Jason had indeed gone to the local police, claiming Hannah was violating the visitation order, despite having missed every scheduled, supervised visit thus far. Though the officers recognized the manipulation for what it was, the incident highlighted the ongoing vulnerability created by Jason's legal connection to Noah. By evening, Hannah and Noah were installed in Michael's penthouse, a temporary measure recommended by their attorney, until an emergency hearing could be arranged to address Jason's erratic behavior and potential threat to Noah's safety. Lily was delighted by the unexpected sleepover, eagerly showing Noah her collection of stuffed animals and setting up an elaborate blanket fort in the living room. The children's easy acceptance of their sudden proximity stood in sharp contrast to the adults' careful navigation of this new intimacy. After the children were asleep, Noah, in a portable crib hastily purchased and assembled in Lily's room, Lily keeping watchful guard from her bed, Michael found Hannah standing at the penthouse windows, arms wrapped tightly around herself as she stared out at the city lights. The attorney thinks we can get the visitation order modified, Michael said, keeping his voice low to avoid disturbing the sleeping children. Jason's behavior today violated several conditions. Hannah nodded without turning. He never wanted Noah, not until there was something to gain money publicity leverage. Now suddenly he's fighting for father's rights and making scenes in public. He won't win, Michael assured her. The judge saw through him before, and this only confirms her assessment. Hannah finally turned moonlight, silvering the tears that traced silent paths down her cheeks. Do you know what he said today? That if I wouldn't share, he'd make sure Noah knew his mother chose a sugar daddy over his real father. The crude accusation hung in the air between them, giving voice to the insinuations that had followed their relationship from the beginning. Michael stepped closer, fighting the impulse to pull her into his arms. Noah will know the truth, he said quietly. He'll know his mother chose his safety and well-being over everything else every single time. Hannah wiped at her tears with an impatient gesture. I'm so tired of fighting, of proving myself worthy of keeping my own child, of justifying every decision, every relationship, every choice. The vulnerability in her admission broke something open between them, the careful distance they'd maintained dissolving in the face of shared concern for Noah's future. You shouldn't have to justify anything, Michael said, his voice rougher than intended. Not your worth as a mother, not your right to rebuild your life, not the people you choose to have in it. Hannah looked up at him, searching his face in the dim light. And what about you? What are you fighting for in all this? The question cut to the heart of everything unspoken between them, the gradual transformation of charity into friendship, of friendship into something deeper neither had been ready to name. Michael considered his answer carefully, aware that superficial reassurance would ring hollow to a woman who had learned the hard way to distinguish between words and actions, between promises and commitment. At first I was fighting ghosts, he admitted, trying to save you and Noah as some kind of atonement for not being able to save Sarah and Caleb. But that changed. Somewhere along the way it stopped being about the past and became about the future, your future, Noah's future. He paused, gathering courage. Our future, maybe, if that's something you could want. Hannah's breath caught, her eyes widening slightly at the tentative offer contained in those words. Michael, The sound of small footsteps interrupted whatever she had been about to say. Lily appeared in the hallway, rubbing her eyes sleepily. Noah's crying. I think he's scared because it's a new place. The moment fractured the unfinished conversation set aside as both adults shifted focus to the immediate needs of a frightened child. By the time Noah was soothed back to sleep, the intimate atmosphere had dissipated, replaced by the practical concerns of the next day's legal proceedings. The emergency hearing granted Hannah a temporary restraining order against Jason, suspending his visitation rights pending a full review. The judge's ruling was unequivocal. Noah's safety and emotional well-being took precedence over biological connection, particularly given Jason's increasingly unstable behavior. For security reasons, Hannah and Noah remained at Michael's penthouse while the legal process unfolded. Days stretched into weeks, the temporary arrangement acquiring the rhythm and familiarity of permanence. Noah's portable crib was replaced by a proper toddler bed in what had been Michael's home office. Hannah's textbooks and study materials accumulated on the dining table. Family dinners became a nightly tradition, bath times and bedtime stories shared responsibilities. Through it all, the unfinished conversation from that moonlit night hovered between them, not forgotten, but deferred by mutual unspoken agreement, until Noah's situation stabilized completely. December arrived with swirling snow and holiday preparations. Lily threw herself into Christmas planning with characteristic enthusiasm, creating elaborate lists of decorations needed and traditions to be observed. Hannah joined these efforts with initial hesitation that gradually gave way to genuine enjoyment, particularly as Noah responded with wide-eyed wonder to each new festive addition. One evening, as they assembled a gingerbread house while the children slept, Michael broached the subject they had been avoiding. Have you made a decision about the apartment near campus? Hannah's hands stilled on the icing bag she'd been using to secure a candy cane to the gingerbread roof. The lease starts January 1st. I paid the deposit and first month's rent. The confirmation settled like a weight in Michael's chest, though he'd known it was coming. I understand you need your independence. It makes sense with school starting. Hannah set down the icing bag carefully. It's not just about independence. It's about clarity. About Noah and me finding our own path forward, not just following the one that circumstance created for us. Michael nodded, struggling to find the right words that would neither pressure nor dismiss. You don't need to explain. You've been clear from the beginning about wanting to stand on your own. That's not, Hannah stopped, frustration evident in her expression. You're not hearing what I'm trying to say. Then tell me, Michael said simply. Whatever it is, just tell me. Hannah drew a deep breath. I need to know that any relationship between us would exist because we choose it, not because it's convenient or because you feel responsible for us. I need to know I can support Noah on my own, so that being with you would be a choice, not a necessity. The distinction she drew illuminated something Michael hadn't fully grasped, that her insistence on independence wasn't rejection of connection, but the prerequisite for an honest one. For a woman who had been abandoned at her most vulnerable, proving she could survive alone was the only way to ensure any partnership she formed came from desire rather than desperation. I want you in my life, she continued, her voice quieter but steady, in Noah's life. But I need to know we're building something real, not just an arrangement born of circumstance. Michael reached across the table, covering her hand with his. Hannah, from the moment you fed Noah those mashed potatoes at Le Pavon, you've been teaching me what real looks like. Real sacrifice, real courage, real love. Nothing about my feelings for you or Noah has ever been an arrangement or an obligation. The honesty between them, finally spoken aloud, created a new clarity. Hannah would take the apartment, establish her independent life, with Noah pursue her education and career path as planned. And Michael would court her properly, not as a benefactor or protector, but as a man who had found in her something he hadn't known he was missing. The custody case concluded permanently 2 weeks before Christmas, the judge granting Hannah full legal custody with provisions for Jason to petition for supervised visitation after completing parenting classes and psychological evaluation. His failure to appear at the final hearing suggested the fight had gone out of him once the potential for financial exploitation diminished. Christmas Eve arrived with gentle snow falling outside the penthouse windows. The tree sparkled with lights and handmade ornaments, Lily's artistic creations alongside Noah's paint-smudged attempts. Presents were arranged beneath, more modest than in previous years. At Michael's insistence, the focus shifted from material excess to meaningful experience. Hannah's parents joined them for dinner, the reconciliation still fragile but progressing. Her father had unbent enough to help Noah place the star atop the tree, lifting the boy to reach the highest branch with a tenderness that suggested healing on both sides. Her mother had brought handmade stockings for each of them, including Michael and Lily, a tangible acknowledgement of the blended family forming before them. After the guests departed and the children were nestled in bed with promises that Santa would come once they were asleep, Michael and Hannah found themselves alone beside the tree, the apartment quiet except for the soft instrumental carols playing in the background. I have something for you, Michael said, reaching beneath the tree for a small package. I'd like you to open it tonight if that's okay. Hannah accepted the gift with a curious smile. We agreed on modest presents this year. It is modest, in cost at least, if not in meaning. She unwrapped the small box, carefully lifting the lid to reveal a simple silver key resting on velvet. Her questioning gaze met his. It's a key to this apartment, Michael explained. Not because I expect you to stay, but because I want you to know you're always welcome. You and Noah will have your own place, your own life exactly as you should. But this door will never be closed to you. Hannah ran her finger over the key, its symbolism far exceeding its practical purpose. Thank you for understanding why I need to do this, even when it might seem like I'm pulling away. You're not pulling away, Michael said with quiet certainty. You're building a foundation. There's a difference, well. Their eyes met in the glow of the Christmas lights, the understanding between them deepening into something that required no further words. When Hannah leaned forward, closing the distance between them, the kiss they shared felt like both culmination and beginning acknowledgement of the journey behind them and promise of the path ahead. New Year's Day dawned bright and cold, the sun glinting off fresh snow as Michael and Lily helped Hannah move the last of her things into the modest apartment near campus. Noah explored the new space with toddler enthusiasm, claiming territory with toys strategically placed in each room. The apartment was small but full of light, a living area with a compact kitchen, 2 bedrooms, a tiny study nook where Hannah had arranged her textbooks and laptop. What it lacked in luxury, it made up for in practicality, with the university and childcare center within walking distance and public transportation easily accessible. As they arranged furniture and unpacked boxes, the space gradually transformed from empty rooms to home photos appeared on walls. Books filled shelves. Noah's artwork brightened the refrigerator door. By afternoon, the basic necessities were in place, though many boxes remained to be unpacked in the coming days. "I think that's enough for today," Hannah said, surveying their progress with satisfaction. "The rest can wait until tomorrow." Lily, who had appointed herself Noah's official entertainment director during the move, looked up from the puzzle they were assembling on the living room floor. "Can we get pizza? Moving makes you hungry, right, Noah?" Noah nodded enthusiastically, his vocabulary still limited, but his opinions quite clear when food was involved. They ordered pizza and ate it picnic style on a blanket spread across the living room floor, the furniture still partially draped with moving cloths. Lily regaled them with elaborate plans for sleepovers and movie nights, her acceptance of the new arrangement far more immediate than the adults' careful navigation of changed circumstances. As evening approached, the inevitable moment of separation loomed larger. Lily grew quieter, her earlier enthusiasm dampened by the realization that they wouldn't all be returning to the penthouse together. "Do we have to go home without them?" she asked Michael as Hannah bathed Noah in the apartment's small bathroom. "Can't we stay just for tonight?" Michael knelt to his daughter's level, recognizing the fear beneath her question. "Hannah and Noah need time to settle into their new home sweet home. But we'll see them tomorrow for the New Year's Day parade, remember?" Lily's lower lip trembled slightly. "But what if they don't want to see us anymore? What if they like their new place better and forget about us?" The question revealed Lily's deeper anxiety that the connection formed over these months might dissolve with physical separation, that the makeshift family they'd created might unravel as quickly as it had formed. "That won't happen," Michael assured her, drawing her into a gentle hug. "Hannah and Noah care about us just like we care about them. Living in different apartments doesn't change that." "Promise?" Lily's voice was small against his shoulder. "I promise." Hannah appeared in the hallway, Noah freshly bathed and pajama-clad in her arms. "Someone wanted to say goodnight before you leave." Noah reached for Lily with determined arms. "Lily, stay." The simple question carried echoes of Lily's own concerns, the children's attachment to each other, having grown deep and mutual over their months together. "Not tonight, buddy," Michael explained gently. "But we'll see you tomorrow for the parade." Noah's face scrunched in concentration as he processed this information. Finally, he pointed a chubby finger at Lily. "Promise?" Lily's solemn nod matched the seriousness of Noah's question. "I promise, and I never break promises to my brother." The casual designation "my brother" hung in the air between the adults, neither contradicting the children's clear categorization of their relationship. Some bonds, it seemed, required no legal documentation or biological connection to become real in the most meaningful sense. The goodbyes were bittersweet, tempered by the knowledge that separation was measured in hours rather than undefined stretches. As Michael and Lily prepared to leave, Hannah walked them to the door, Noah drowsy against her shoulder. "Thank you," she said quietly to Michael, "for understanding, for helping, for everything." Michael brushed a strand of hair from her face, the gesture intimate but restrained. "This isn't an ending, you know, just a new chapter." Hannah's smile held a confidence that had been absent when they first met, the assurance of a woman who had reclaimed her path forward and chosen her companions along that path with clear eyes. "I know," she said simply. "I'll call you tomorrow morning about the parade." As Michael and Lily walked to their car through the gently falling snow, Lily glanced back at the apartment windows where Hannah stood with Noah, both waving goodbye. "They'll be okay, won't they, Daddy?" Michael followed her gaze, taking in the image of Hannah and Noah framed in the warm light of their new home, independent but connected, separate but still part of the expanded family they'd all created together. "Yes," he said with quiet certainty, "we all will."